Welcome, classic rock fans, to Volume 2 of Bands I Hate. I don't really hate all of them. Some of them I just sort of dislike for one reason or another. If you missed Volume 1 of this, by the way, I'll stick the card up there for you to check out. Anyway, let's get into this. Number 10 is Emerson, Palmer. Now, I realise this might be a bit of a shock for you guys, and to be honest with you, I don't really hate them. I just don't like them that much. To me, I find their music cold, emotionless, sterile. I feel there's no emotional connection at all with what they do. I mean, I love Yes and I love Genesis. But ELP, to me, listening to their music feels like the kind of prog equivalent of doing a tax return. Don't get me wrong, I truly respect them and their talent. But, I mean, I love their first album, their debut album, and I think Pictures at an Exhibition was another one I quite liked. But for me, I feel about this band's music the same way Chris Welsh feels about Dream Theater when he was describing Images and Words. He said, it's like watching a group of scientists assemble an atomic bomb. You can marvel at the skill and ingenuity on display without actually liking the end result. John Peel famously called them a waste of talent and electricity when they transmogrified horribly from the Nice. Now the Nice are a band that for me had much more appeal. To be honest with you, I rarely listen to them. When it comes to progressive rock, I always find myself reaching for something else. Number 9 is Family. I realise this one might be a bit of a shocker for you guys, as I have a lot of respect for them, like ELP. But I think with this band I just cannot tolerate Roger Chapman's voice with that insane vibrato. This band were mainly active from 1966 to 1973 and incorporate within their music lots of other influences like folk, psychedelia, acid rock, jazz, fusion. I do have a couple of their albums, but that voice makes their music, listening to their music, not a pleasurable experience for me. And number 8 are those Britpop legends, Oasis. I like some of the songs, and they've got a few anthemic toe tappers out there, but I just feel they're terribly overrated. And the fact that people are out there frothing at the prospect of this band getting back together just shows how musically impoverished we are. Liam's lager lout swagger, I never particularly liked that. I think Noel Gallagher is an okay songwriter, but he's nowhere near in the same league as some of those songwriters he claims to be influenced by, I think. Although I must admit, actually, I quite like a lot of his solo stuff. I really enjoyed the last High Flying Birds album, Council Skies. But for me, Oasis, just not a fan, I'm afraid. And number 7 is Blur, keeping with that Britpop theme. Again, this band with their cheeky, chappy demeanour and that kind of Kinks, Muswell Hill vibe I think they were trying to recreate just doesn't work, quite frankly. But then I think I have an issue with Britpop anyway. I'm going to do a 10 Best Britpop Bands video. That'll be coming soon. As a genre, it was okay. It was interesting to hear that pleasant jangle of guitars once more dominating the pop scene. But for me, these groups seem to be emulating bands and music that was done so much better 20 years prior. I must admit, I did like the whole Cool Britannia thing. It felt nice to talk about your country in a positive way without being accused of being some kind of extremist. As regards Blur, I do like a couple of their songs. My daughter's a big fan, by the way. But I'm not keen on all this Cockney knees-up shit, a sort of Britpop version of Dick Van Dyke. Number 6 is Bon Jovi. This was the first band I ever saw live. As a teenager, I was really into Kiss. Went to see them on the Animalised tour, and guess who their support act was? I enjoyed their first album. I loved the song Runaway, to be honest with you. But I find some of their stuff okay. But to be honest with you, I never want to hear Living on a Prayer ever again. But I find this big-haired corporate rock thing of the 80s a little bit too plastic. I think I even felt like that then. I think Bon Jovi are a perfect example of why grunge had to happen. Some good tunes, but overall, so what, I guess. Number 5 is Guns N' Roses. This band for me represent a moment in time rather than a band. They represent the sort of early 80s Sunset Strip vibe. An Appetite for Destruction was such a great album, and it's interesting that this Maxim is one that's kind of played out regarding this band's career. Great record, full of attitude and swagger, but once I think they tasted success and the drugs got a lot better, they just sort of lost their edge, really. They became nothing more than the musical equivalent of a nonchalant shrug. A band overshadowed by its on and off stage histrionics more than anything else, with Axl Rose sounding like a man who's come down a little bit too hard on his own scrotum. Number 4 is U2. This band, for me, represent a promise squandered. I mean, to quote Jerry Maguire, they had me with Actung Baby, which is such a good album. I love that album. which saw them in kind of post-war, post-wall Berlin. Maybe to seek a different sound, but like Bowie, they at this time they had an edge, no pun intended. And this album is infused with this sense of creeping paranoia. It's so interesting, and they managed to achieve this without having to put bottles of piss in the fridge. But now they seem to be represented by that hackney-eyed cathedral chime of guitars and Bono posturing. Seems to be their very identity, as if there's any real merit outside of, well, this is what we do. All That You Leave Behind wasn't a bad album, actually, to be honest. You credit where credit's due, but overall I can take them or leave them. But generally prefer to leave them. Number 3 is UB40. I must confess, I just don't like reggae, and certainly not this faux appropriation of it. Reggae stylistically is interesting. It incorporates lots of elements of jazz, rhythm and blues. And if I may quote Wikipedia, it's a celebratory rural folk form that served its largely rural audience as dance music and an alternative to the hymns and adapted shanties of local church singing. I respect it, I truly do. I just don't like it very much. And this band must get a Christmas card from Neil Diamond every year, because that fucking awful red wine was pushed down our throats continuously throughout 1983. I used to have a school friend of mine that loved UB40. I used to go around his house to play with his dog and catch a cigarette. But he used to play this music all the time, UB40 and Bad Manners as well. God, do you remember Bad Manners? The Can. Somebody once said, just when you think music has reached an all-time low, there's always something that will come along to drag it down another stage. Number 2 is Frankie Goes to Hollywood. My word, this band caused a stir when I was at school with that single Relax. I remember all the BBC DJs wouldn't play it because they said it was degenerate. But they, at the time, like Thatcher, was quite busy shagging minors, I think. And the video for that, with its allusions to golden showers and bacchanalian orgies, just didn't do it for me, I'm afraid. And the less said about Two Tribes, the better, with that incessant chugger of guitars, with those two old geezers wrestling around. Mind you, it's a video and song that's probably quite pertinent for today's world, isn't it? And then we get The Power of Love, a number we have to endure during the festive feeding frenzy at Walmart whilst buying some plastic shite for our kids. Power of Love, my arse. Number 1 is Spandau Ballet. I just cannot stand that smooth cravatted lounge singer shtick that Tony Hadley has for this elevator music of the 1980s, played as Rodney slow danced with Cassandra. This was the sort of band you might have said you liked just because lots of girls liked them. Mind you, lots of girls liked Duran Duran as well. They were a good band. There was something thrilling about their whole vibe and sound, but neither of them were as thrilling as that second album by Adam and the Ants, in my opinion. For me, Spandau Ballet represent that empty embrace of style over substance. They're just so 80s pop. I think one critic described them as Thatcherism on vinyl. That much is true. And there you go, that's 10 more bands I cannot stand. Don't get a bee in your bonnet, it's just good fun, really. It's all good stuff. If you enjoyed this video, please do share it. Do click like, subscribe and check that notification bell. And check some of the links below this video for ways you can support the sterling work done at Classic Album Review. Become a Patreon, why not? There's a fine body of work on there now. And become a part of a classic rock community. Anyway, I'll leave you with my closing salvo, which is, as you know, hope you're well, staying safe, and of course that you keep listening.